We're gonna go over the best nutrition for throwers, and we're gonna start right now. When we're looking at throwing, okay, let's just put this in the light of, we've got a 7-foot circle, we've got a 2.5 meter discus circle. We are trying to accelerate and implement as fast as possible, right? So we have to do that, but by doing so, we need to look at, all right, what are the parameters that are gonna get us to move a little bit quicker? If we can move a little bit quicker, if we can apply a little bit more force, we can then generate that speed that we need to throw the implement farther. We essentially have a finite space of which we're gonna actually be able to accelerate the shot or accelerate the discus or the hammer, whatever the event that you're doing, javelin as well. But when we're looking at it, we have to understand that our training is gonna be done in the weight room, it's gonna be done in the circle, we might be doing drills, and we're gonna be doing exercises that will lead to larger muscles, okay? We know that larger muscles can produce more force as long as we're trained effectively, okay? There's even evidence that there is a point of diminishing returns where muscle size might not continue with that continuum of power output. So there is a point where that might happen if we aren't training properly. Now, if we're leading and using things like myofibrillar hypertrophy to lead to greater size, and then we're also using that training to improve our tendon hypertrophy or our ligament hypertrophy, that's gonna help our body produce more force without really having any inhibition upon the body. So the muscle spindles will recognize that we can produce a ton of force and in turn, smash PRs. Okay, so that's how things have to be looked at. But then we get into the realm of recovery. Okay, and I think that when we're talking about the realm of recovery, especially with throwers in the past, everything is based around, let's just eat as much as possible. I'd rather be fat and happy than run and puke. It's sort of like that high school saying. And it's really pathetic if you ask me, because I believe that when we're looking at throwing, we need to treat it as though we're elite athletes. We need to treat it as though we're one of the most explosive sports on the planet. Outside of gymnastics, maybe Olympic weightlifting, there's no other sport where there's as much explosiveness involved as there is in throwing a shot or throwing a discus. And we need to treat the sport with the utmost respect and recognize that for us to become on the level of Ryan Krauser, Val Allman, Joe Kovacs, Tom Walsh, Sandra Perkovich, we need to treat our body well and actually recover as effectively as possible. And on top of that, if we're in high school and we're a thrower, we want to make sure that our bodies, one, are healthy, but two, they can be used in other sports that we might be playing, like football or basketball or wrestling, whatever those sports are going to be. And that's where we're going to go into the best nutrition for shot put and discus and what you guys can take away from this today and apply it into your own training. Okay, so that first key factor, we've got to have big time strength. If we look at, let's have a huge back squat. Okay, let's have a huge power clean. Let's have a big bench press. So look at Val Allman. She's power clean like 125 kilos, 130 kilos. Jaime Perez, a world champion who trains here at Garage Strength at Throws University. She's power cleaned over 130 kilos. She's power snatched 100 kilos. She needs to be extraordinarily strong. Okay, look at Joe Kovacs. He's benched over 600 plus pounds, even higher, maybe 700 plus pounds. We need to be able to recover as well as possible, and we need to formulate those building blocks so that in turn, we can build more muscle mass. Okay, this goes back to if we're training well and we're building larger muscles, in turn, we'll be able to recover and continue this cycle of training. Okay, and that's where protein comes into play. And what I recommend is that everybody today writes down an inventory of what did you eat the last 3 days. Try to take down what did you eat, and then you can download an app. There's multiple different apps out there that you can understand what those macros are gonna be. And macros are gonna be protein, carbohydrates, fats, and yes, alcohol is considered a macro. Okay, so if you took that down and you wrote everything down, what did you eat for the last 3 days? You're gonna be able to see, once you put all that food into that macro tracker, how much protein did you eat? And then that's where we can start, okay? We need to pick that off first. That's the most important factor behind becoming a freak thrower. Now, we need to look at it and say, all right, if I wanna bench press a lot, back squat a lot, power clean a lot, behind the neck jerk a lot, like Eric Favors here at Garage Strength, then we need to be having a minimum of 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So if I weigh 220 pounds, which I do, I better be having 220 grams of protein if I want to increase my lean muscle mass. But that all starts with tracking what you've eaten over the last 3 days, breaking that down, and then looking and saying, oh wow, I'm like getting 160 grams of protein. If I improve the way I eat and I eat more protein, I'm probably gonna throw farther. So that's the first step, 1 gram per pound of body weight in regards to protein. That second key factor is going to be looking at carbohydrates as a fuel, okay? Looking at it as, I want to eat carbs around my training. I want to eat carbs to improve my recovery. I want to eat carbohydrates so that I feel really, really good. And one of the things that a lot of throwers fall into is that we tend to eat junk, okay? We're sucking down big gulps. We're crushing 48 ounces of Mountain Dews. We're just getting hammered with giant tasty cakes and things along those lines, candy bars. Total junk, Rice Krispie treats. I know a lot of throwers out there right now watching are probably eating a Rice Krispie treat. That's where we're seeing a lot of carbohydrate consumption. But then the problem comes is that, oh, I gotta lose weight. And so what we do to lose weight is we go full on low carb. We basically just try and cut that all out. Okay, so we go full on low carb and then we lose a lot of weight and then we bring carbohydrates back in and then we gain weight because now we're eating in excess. And it's not that we're cutting carbs that we're losing weight, it's that we're cutting calories. So when we're looking at this, if we want to bulk or just slowly gain weight, we need to slowly add in these calories and we need to look at carbohydrates from oatmeal, from sweet potatoes, from bananas, from mangoes, okay? All of those areas that are gonna help us be healthier, but they're also gonna fuel us during our training session. It's also gonna provide a large amount of energy. And I recommend starting around 250 to 300 grams of carbs, okay? And then maybe you slowly build up depending upon how much weight you wanna gain or how many calories you need to consume. That goes back to, what did you eat over the last 3 days? What were those macros? What was the total caloric intake? And then if we can look at protein and we can look at carbohydrates and then we would fill in the rest of those calories with the remainder coming from fat, now we have a really balanced diet. But I recommend 250 to 300 grams of carbohydrates. And if you still feel like you're lagging a little bit or you could be eating a little bit more, add in another 50 grams of carbohydrates and that's gonna help you feel better and recover really, really well. Now that third key factor is, okay, we've got carbohydrates, we've got protein covered. What I recommend then is when you look at that total calories, like I mentioned earlier, is now the rest would come from fat. And that's typically gonna be about 50 to 90 grams coming from fat. And typically what I would recommend is try to get the fat from avocados, try to get the fat from lean beef, grass-fed beef, try and get that fat from wild fish. That's really where you want to get most of your fat consumption from. And that's gonna take us into that fourth key factor is now, if we've got the carbs figured out, we've got the protein, we've got the fat figured out, what can we do around pre-workout and how can we time those things? And I like to rhyme with my stuff, right? I like to use things that's gonna make it easy to remember. In pre-workout, we really should be thinking carbs and caffeine. If you're in high school, make sure you talk to your parents, make sure that they're okay with you consuming caffeine. But look at it as, all right, if I could have 50 to 80 grams of carbohydrates about an hour out from training, and then on top of that, have about 150 to 200 milligrams of caffeine, I'm gonna feel pretty good when I'm in my training session. I'm gonna be able to get 20 to 30 throws in, okay? And then post-workout, I'm gonna be able to get in that big lift that I need to improve my overall performance. And I think that's the big factor here is like, we don't have a base understanding of what are protein, what's carbohydrates, what's fats, what are the macros that we need to be hitting, what's the caloric intake that we need to be hitting, okay? And then how can we time that? About an hour out, 50 to 80 grams of carbohydrates, make sure you have 150 to 200 milligrams of caffeine, and then see how you guys feel throughout your training session for that first week of where you're changing your diet. I would recommend 30 to 40 grams of protein post-workout, 30 to 60 minutes. It doesn't have to be right away, but that 30 to 60 minutes makes it a little bit more of a ritual, and now that's gonna improve your overall recovery. So all those things will play a massive role in how you're gonna compete and how you're gonna feel as a shot putter or a discus thrower, hammer thrower, and javelin thrower as well. So if you guys need help with your training, head over to throwsuniversity.com. You can pick up a training program or a technical analysis where we can help you guys dial up your nutrition and drop some bombs. Until next time, peace.